Welcome to Forum 360. I'm Sally Henning. Our very special guest today, the past commander of the Jewish War Veterans, a national organization, Mr. Joseph Zoldan of Minerva, Ohio. Welcome to Forum 360. And also our very special guest, a veteran of World War II, a man who served both at the Battle of the Bulge and in the Pacific, Bertram Vogel. Thank you so much from Canton, Ohio. Thank you so much for coming to Forum 360. It's a pleasure. Well, let's start off with you, Mr. Zoldan. The Jewish War Veterans, tell us about the group and its important mission.
It's a national group made up of Jewish war veterans who served in the U.S. military since the Civil War, since the war when we started out. It's the oldest active veterans organization in the United States. We're older, we're about 122 years old, our organization.
Not personally.
Me, no, maybe my friend next to me might be 122, but I'm not 122. But
The organization.
our organization, in fact, in San Antonio, Texas, this summer in August, we will have our national convention celebrating 122 years.
How many, approximately how many members does Jewish War Veterans have?
Well, right now, probably it's down to, I'd say, around 18 to 20,000. After World War II, when a lot of the GIs came home, there were obviously 60, 70, maybe even 80,000, because the World War II group was the largest group in the Jewish war veterans. Unfortunately, we're losing quite a few of them, and when we got involved in the Korean War, which I was in at that time, a lot of young men were actually deferring from going into the military. They were doing things like going to Canada. They were doing things like signing up for master's degrees in college so they wouldn't have to go. So it really got down a lot smaller. But today I'd say we probably, it's hard to say because we have associate members too, and I don't know what the number would be there, but we count them. They can't hold office, but they are active members and they participate in all of our veterans activities, and they are part of our mission.
Well, speaking of World War II, we have with us
There we go.
a representative of the greatest generation, Mr. Vogel. Would you welcome first of all to Forum 360, and would you share with us a little bit about your experiences in World War II?
Well, my experience in World War II started a few days after Pearl Harbor. I was in high school at 15 years old, and I wrote a poem that was published in Washington, D.C.
Would you recite it for us, please? Do you remember
As
it?
much as I can remember. On
Wow.
December the 7th of 41, the so-called land of the rising sun stabbed Uncle Sam in his back with their early morn Pearl Harbor attack. Our men were unaware that winged death was in the air until they heard the rattle of machine guns and the wail and screech of bombs falling on ships and beach. And then there's a couple of other stanzas I don't remember, but I do remember the last stanza because that was my goal during my entire service. In the many months and years to come, our armed forces will set the rising sun.
Well, a poet and a warrior.
And my first involvement was, I lived in Washington, D.C. I was the first one in Washington, D.C. to pass the EDI test.
I'm sorry, the what test?
EDI test, E-D-E-Y. And it was a comprehensive math and science test, which if you passed and was accepted by the Navy, you went in as a seaman first instead of apprentice seaman. Only 4 weeks of boot camp, and went right into technical schools, probably learning towards electronic technicians. I passed it. I went into the Navy in the fall of 1943 at the age of 17 with the parents' approval, and from there on it was hectic.
17 years old, and you were shipped overseas. Were you still 17 when you were shipped overseas, or had you turned 18 by
No, I
then?
turned 18 because I went to, in 43, 44, I turned 18.
In
February
1944.
24th. And that's a very significant date in my history. I opted out of the electronic technicians program, primarily because they would not send me to schools near my home. I wanted to go to Washington, D.C. for
For school.
primary. They sent me to Gulfport, Mississippi. I wanted to go to Washington, D.C. for my secondary. They sent me to Treasure Island, California.
Well, that's close.
So I said, I'm out. They said, if you're out, you have to volunteer right away. We're getting ready for something big.
And where did they ship you overseas first? Where did you go first?
I was assigned to a destroyer, the USS O'Brien,
O'Brien.
and for his support fleet for D-Day in Europe,
Oh my.
Normandy. We were there providing fire support to the landing forces. Where they identified a target for us, we would take it out for them. Toward about the 15th day of D-Day, after D-Day, we were support the invasion of Cherbourg to capture the seaport. And my ship got hit by a 210 millimeter German artillery on the bridge, killed 18 men,
Oh my.
and we had to retire. And we were sent back to the States for approximately 6 months of repair, and I said, I'm young and anxious, I can't sit still. Reassign me. I want to go where there's action. So they sent me out to the Pacific. And I got on another ship in the Pacific and went D-Day, it was the USS Cooper. And we were at the end of Guam, the invasion of Peleliu, the invasion of Battle of Lady Gulf, and on December 3rd of 1944, while investigating the possibility of landing at Ormoc on the western part of Leyte, my ship and 2 other destroyers got involved in a firefight with Japanese that were landing there, and we were successful part of the way by taking out one destroyer. But we got hit by a torpedo and broke in half, and the forward part of the ship went down in less than a minute. I got up out of repair aft where I was, and I stepped over the side and into the water.
So you were actually in where your ship was shot, was destroyed, and you and the other men were in the water.
Right.
And how long were you in the water?
I was in the water for 26 hours.
And it had to have been cold.
It was a little chilly.
A little chilly. It had to be very cold. You're in the
No,
water.
this was the Philippines,
Okay.
but
How many hours were you in the water?
26 hours.
26 a day?
Yeah,
More than
over
a day.
yeah.
Over a day.
Yeah.
With nothing to eat, nothing to drink?
Yeah, seawater, but that made you sick.
You
But,
must have been
I was
able-
very busy fighting off sharks.
You must have been hearing the other men around you. It
Oh,
must
yeah.
have been horrendous.
Yeah, I heard them yell and scream when they get hit by sharks. When they're going down, hearing them.
And somehow the sharks didn't eat you. How did you keep them at bay?
By poking them in the eye or in the gills. But my favorite thing right now is they didn't eat kosher.
Okay.
But I got picked up by guerrillas, Philippine guerrillas. They got hold of Tacloban, and they sent a Catalina in to pick us up, and took us to Tacloban.
So they were resistance fighters in the Philippines
Oh, yeah.
who picked you up and somehow contacted the American forces.
That's correct.
How long were you with the Filipino fighters?
Oh,
Do you
less than
remember?
a day.
Less than a day. Wow.
Yeah, because they got it by radio, and they sent a Catalina flying boat in to pick a whole group of us up.
How many men had been on the ship?
There were 358 men, and we lost 191 in the sinking.
100. Many good friends, I'm sure. Many good friends, I'm
And
sure.
they want to send me back to the States for survivor's leave, and I said, no.
So you could have sat out twice.
Pardon?
You could have sat out twice.
Oh, yeah.
But you were determined to go back each time.
Yeah, they reassigned me to another ship, the Gennard, and I went on to Luzon, the first and second Tokyo strikes with task force, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. And my 19th birthday on February 24th, 1945, during an air attack at Iwo Jima, I got shot between the eyes by shrapnel, hit by shrapnel, knocked my nose off.
It's back now. You survived.
They pushed my nose back and took 5 stitches, told me to get back to action. I did. We went on to Okinawa and spent fighting kamikazes up there. My ship got the Naval Unit Citation for its actions at Okinawa.
And when you're talking about kamikazes, you're talking about flyers who were
Suicide planes.
suicide flyers. Just amazing.
Now, one of the ships that we were on Piccadilly with, you can see at Charleston, South Carolina, in their Navy museum down there. It's a Laffey. She took 7 kamikazes. 7 planes hit her with carrying their bombs and everything, and she survived. She's known as a ship that wouldn't die.
And we're going to talk more, but Joe, I need to ask, what is the most exciting or surprising experience that you had as national commander for Jewish war veterans? Maybe it's listening to stories like this.
Yeah, I'm feeling like a school child hearing this, because this gentleman has done an awful lot for our country, and he's served well, and he's experienced tremendous experiences. There's nothing I could say that would even touch what he's doing.
Oh, I don't know. You were in Korea, weren't you?
No, I wasn't in Korea. I was in Europe.
In
I
Europe.
went there, yeah. Okay, I'll give you an exciting moment, but it's not that exciting. Talking to him, it's not exciting. My wife and I were at Normandy Beach when they had, I think, the 40th anniversary in '83.
Oh, how marvelous.
And we were a group of people waiting there for, when was Reagan was president, I believe then.
Okay.
They flew him in to speak to us, and they were celebrating it's either the 40th or the 50th anniversary of the landing at Normandy, which he's already referred to that
Wow.
landing.
When my wife and I went back there and went to
We
the
went-
cemetery there,
Oh, my.
I made it a point to go around to each site that had a mug and dove, a Star of David on it, and I said, gosh, for those Jewish.
Bless your heart. You're tuned in to Forum 360. Our very special guest today, the past National Commander of Jewish War Veterans, Joe Zoldan, and our honored veteran, Bertram Vogel. I'm Sally Henning. We were just talking about exciting moments. Could we also talk about the honor flights? What are the honor flights, and tell me about them?
Well, what they do is they sign you up to show up at an airport, and they put you on an airplane, and they fly you to Washington, D.C.
These are veterans,
Yeah,
Jewish
these are all
veterans, but
veterans.
also
Yeah.
other veterans
no,
as well.
these are all veterans.
All veterans,
It
right.
doesn't have to be Jewish. You could be a Chinese veteran, and if you've served in the United States Army, you're a veteran.
Sure, of course.
They put them on the planes, and they put them with people to help them that have trouble walking or anything like that. They go to Washington, D.C., and they spend a day there going around to all the different places where veterans have memorials. When they're done, and they have meals and everything else, they fly them back, like they come out of Akron-Canton Airport or come out of Cleveland Airport. They fly them there, and then they fly them back, and there's no charge whatsoever.
For the veterans.
For the veterans, yeah.
It's marvelous.
Now, I didn't go on that because I was there when they opened it up. I lived there. I lived in Washington, D.C. area.
But you have gone to other places where veterans are honored. Would you like to talk about some of those places where veterans are honored on a regular basis?
Oh, no. There's a restaurant in Washington, in Canton, Ohio.
What's it called?
Mission Barbecue,
Okay.
and they're dedicated to the uniformed people. This first week of April, for example, every day is going to be dedicated to. First day is the Coast Guard. Second day is Navy, Air Force, Marines, and they're giving out free sandwich for every member and his family that comes in.
For every veteran.
Veterans. They, on a regular basis, they give free meals, complete free meals for any World War II veteran.
Wow.
Thank you.
So, you know, we've been talking about your experiences as veterans and on the national scene and local scene. Let's talk about with family. Did there come a time when it was difficult? You're coming back from the war, you're coming back into civilian life. Was it difficult for you to discuss your experiences with your family?
Well, first of all, to enlighten you, this gentleman came back to a family, I believe, when
Yeah.
he came back. I was a single man. I didn't come back to a
okay.
family.
I was single.
Oh, you were
too.
saying, I went
Okay.
back to Ohio State. I came back to finish my college education. So I didn't have any, you know, there was no big adjustment for me to make to go back to college. I'd been there for 3 years, and when I come out of the service, I went right back, and there was no problem. Except I had a GI Bill, which even helped out a lot because they provided money for housing and for books and for education. So the GI Bill took care of that. I don't think, do they even have the GI Bill now? I don't know. Do you know?
Oh, I think they
Not
do.
much of anything, yeah.
I don't think they have it.
I got out of the Navy on May the 9th, 1945, 46.
How do you remember these dates?
And in June, I started George Washington University engineering school. And I met my wife-to-be in the second year in the student union playing bridge.
Student union. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
And within a year, we were engaged and married. And let her rest in peace. We had 3 daughters, one of which is here. My oldest daughter is down in Myrtle Beach, and my youngest daughter is in Colorado. I had 5 grandchildren, and right now we're still counting. I've got 13 great grandchildren
Oh, mazel tov.
because 2 of them, my daughter that's here, Sharon Fladen, and her husband had 3 boys. The oldest boy is an attorney out in Colorado with 2 girls. The next oldest is an ultra-Orthodox rabbi in New York with 5 children. And the youngest one is an ultra-Orthodox rabbi in North Miami Beach with 4 children, still counting.
So and you have many children and grandchildren too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I got plenty of grandchildren,
So-
plenty of children.
The process of sharing with your children and grandchildren your experiences in the military, how does that, or the august position of being national commander
Well,
of Jewish war
okay,
veterans?
let me tell you how that's worked for me. I don't know if my good friend to my right. It's worked for me when I used to tell the story. After a couple times, they would say, "Well, Dad, put it in a book." He'd say, "Put it in a book." 'Cause especially my son-in-law in Akron, he would say, "Dad, put that in the book." You know, I start to tell the story, put it in the book. But there is one little vignette I would like to mention, and it really isn't as militaristic as we're talking, but I thought it was interesting. I grew up in a town called Minerva, Ohio. 3,000 people. 1 Jewish family at that time. I went to that school system as the only Jewish boy. My parents insisted that I take piano lessons. I took piano lessons, and once a year, the teacher would have a recital. Now, where would she have the recital in?
The local church, I
The
imagine.
First Methodist Church,
Of
in the
course,
First
of course.
Methodist Church.
'Cause they
So I
have room.
played in the piano, I played in a recital 3 years in a row in the First Methodist Church
Okay.
as a little Jewish boy. That's
Sure.
the first thing. Then, when I went off to the service later on, because after that I went through high school, went through 3 years of college, I went into the service. I'm stationed overseas in Paris, Orleans, outside of Paris, France, and they were putting together a group of choraliers at Christmas time.
Oh, you're right.
You ready? They said they're going to have a choralier group will travel all over Europe to all the bases to entertain the soldiers. And guess what guess who was in that group?
Of course you were.
They pulled me into that group. We traveled all over Europe. I got a big citation. I should have I got a huge citation. Joseph Zoldan, the Esco Choraliers, that was the name of my outfit. And I'm famous for singing Christmas carols all over Europe. Now, think about that, a Jewish boy singing Christmas carols.
America. That's what America's all about.
Because that wasn't going to happen very often. I thought that was interesting there, that part.
That's pretty interesting.
With me, I kept quiet. I couldn't talk about it for almost 60 years.
60 years. And then what happened?
Because how could you talk amongst the kids about what you saw and what you experienced? You're a loader, you're a gunner on a machine gun, and you turn around, and when you turn around, your loader's head falling off.
Ooh.
And, I mean, they couldn't talk about it
No.
until my 3 grandsons here said, "Granddaddy."
When you say here, you mean in Canton, Ohio.
Right.
Right.
I moved to Canton, Ohio when my wife passed away in 2009. And thank God my daughter, Sharon, asked me to come live with her, and that's where I am now.
So your grandchildren came to you and they asked you to talk about your
To
experiences?
Put it down.
To
Put it down so we could pass it on to our generations. I put it down, and Gary Brown, at the repository, got hold of it, and he put it
He put your story in the Canton Repository.
in the Canton Repository on July the 23rd, 2012.
And that helped you, the process of being able to talk about.
Since then, I've been asked to talk to people, students about it.
How many medals do you think you have?
Huh?
How many medals do you think you have
I
offhand?
got about 12 minutes, 8 or 10, something like that. I don't know.
8 or 10?
There's
yeah.
a picture of it there.
Yeah, yeah. So really, well, let me ask you another question. There must be in your lives children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. What advice do you have for the children and the grandchildren, great-grandchildren, as to what they can do to not just to find out about Jews who served in the military, but also what they can do to be of service to their country? What have you thought about that?
Well, my children have joined what they call the Descendants of Jewish War Veterans. We have an organization, the Descendants of JWV, and the boys all joined that, okay? And the girls could join the auxiliary, but my daughter hadn't joined the auxiliary, but the boys did join. And I tell them, you got to live a good life and do the right things, get an education, get a job. Don't try to work the system, do what's right. That's all. That's the best advice you can get of any child, really.
Mr. Vogel.
Well, right now, the wars that we've been fighting have not been good wars. They've been wars of greed. And if my children or grandchildren, or great-grandchildren want to go into the service, I would recommend them to go into the Navy, of course. You have a clean bunk and a hot meal every day, and you don't live in a foxhole. And if they want to, that's their prerogative. I would not stop them.
So tell me a little bit about the National Convention that's coming up in August.
Well, we have these national conventions every year, and we also have a mid-year convention, which I was just at in February in Washington, D.C. But the national convention, we come in from all over the country, and each of the organizations brings their representatives. There are banquets, obviously. There are scheduled programs, guest speakers. We try to get somebody from the, like from the government to speak like us. It'd be nice to get a president, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. But and we have reports given.
Maybe a son-in-law.
Yeah, we get reports, and the other thing is we discuss policy. We have a lot of things to discuss when it comes to policies because it's a never-ending, we all live in a world of changing situations. And if you don't stay up with the changing situations, you'll soon fall to the side. And, we want to still be a very aggressive organization. And we have a museum, by the way, in Washington, D.C.
And where is it located in
It's
Washington
located
City?
at 1811 R Street.
For Jewish war veterans on
It's
1811
called,
R Street.
it's our national headquarters, and also we have a museum there, and I just happen to be the president of that museum.
Okay, so modest.
I'm modest. You know how modest I am? I'm the president of that museum. And we have all kinds of paraphernalia and movies. It's you know, it's like the Cantons Football Hall of Fame, only a lot smaller. But
Well-
that's what we have. You can go in and see movies. You can see pictures from World War II.
And we invite our audience to check it out.
Oh yeah, definitely,
We're-
definitely
You've been
check it out.
tuned into Forum 360. Our special guest today, the past commander of the Jewish war veterans and the president of their museum, Joseph Zoldan from Minerva, Ohio, and from Canton, Ohio, a World War II veteran, Bertram Vogel. Thanks to both of you for appearing on Forum 360. I'm Sally Henning.
Forum 360 is brought to you with support from Electric Impulse Communications, Kim and Harvey Nelson, Rubber City Radio Group, Acronist.com, Hudson Cable, Medical Mutual of Ohio, Forum 360 supporters, and the Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron.